We are celebrating mental disorders in America right now. People who have changed their parts and can't go back. And you know what happens? Suicide rates go up after they transition. After they transition. And Candace Owens wasn't the one that chopped their dicks off. Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this. Next question.
Your demented, homophobic, and transphobic rhetoric and rants just further prove our point that we have to fight loudly to be respected. The reason that LGBTQIA+ suicide rates are so high in this country isn't just because we're part of the community. It's because there are people like you who make us feel like we don't belong.
You're pretending that someone committed suicide because of Candace Owens. You've got no facts here. You're just going, it's your rhetoric that's causing all of this. When in reality, you want to talk about the tea. I sat down with a man named Walt Heyer who was convinced to chop his penis off after your community told him that there was something wrong with him because he had confusion.
Candace Owens never hesitates to hastily shut down anybody that tries to vilify her for speaking her mind. And today, we are going to watch a Q&A where she took on a horde of woke university students that tried to trap her and failed miserably. Let's get into it.
So my question isn't specifically about anything you really said tonight, although I don't really agree with anything you said.
Okay.
I'm proudly part of the LGBTQ community. I've always stood up for my community whenever I needed to. I want to focus specifically on, I've been listening to you for a little bit just to understand some things. A live stream you did about Pride Month in June on Facebook because you were no longer allowed on YouTube. The event that you were talking about, I actually had the honor of attending that event with a lot of my really close friends, and I found it very perplexing to me how you choose to only focus on the things that are negative when it comes to the queer community.
Sorry, when it comes to what community?
The queer community.
Okay.
Do you not realize that people like you and people like the people you're around and that, continue to have this idea of us are the reason we feel that we have to be so openly proud of who we are.
Now watch what he says next. He gets very daring here.
Your demented, homophobic, and transphobic rhetoric and rants just further prove our point that we have to fight loudly to be respected. The reason that LGBTQIA+ suicide rates are so high in this country isn't just because we're part of the community. It's because there are people like you who make us feel like we don't belong. The only LGBTQ agenda we have is...
Okay, is there a question in there or a speech?
Yes.
You got to ask a question, buddy. I know you wrote this out in your notes, but ask a question. Let's go.
How do you think other people who, with your beliefs, respond to the fact that your hateful and harmful rhetoric costs the lives of queer children every single day, on average, every 45 seconds?
Okay, so this is just going to be a pure boogeyman. You're pretending that someone committed suicide because of Candace Owens. You've got no facts here. You're just going, it's your rhetoric that's causing all of this. When in reality, you want to talk about the tea. I sat down with a man named Walt Heyer who was convinced to chop his penis off after your community told him that there was something wrong with him because he had confusion. Why was he trans? Because he was molested when he was 4 years old by his uncle.
Candace raised a very serious issue here. This is something that woke activists always bury their heads in the sand over because they are too overly focused on protecting the feelings of minorities instead of their actual future. And not only this, let me tell you, around 83% of kids that experience gender dysmorphia transition back to their original gender later in adulthood. Imagine if we lived in a world where they were all allowed to do whatever permanent changes they want with their bodies. We are on the verge of that becoming a reality if this keeps up, and we still let unhinged people continue taking all the important decisions.
Rather than being sat down and spoken to by a psychologist, he was handed hormone pills, and he eventually chopped off his penis. Walt Heyer is now 80 years old. He detransitioned, and he does a lot of work talking about why it is that he runs a charity, okay, an actual charity that is dedicated to sex change regret, of people who have changed their parts and can't go back. And you know what happens? Suicide rates go up after they transition. After they transition. And Candace Owens wasn't the one that chopped their dicks off. Great. Next question.
Somebody has to push back against the woke mob that doesn't consider the other side of the issue. It seems like that's going to be Candace today. Now listen to this savagery.
Let's calm down. I just want to say, I am not the doctor who chopped off these people's penises. I am not the person that caused them to have that depression after they go through these transitions and can't just magically go back. So as I said, that is a complete, it's just creating an absolute straw man. Your rhetoric has done this. You have no idea what's going on in those individuals' lives and how they are being inspired to ruin their own lives. And so on my platform, I do host people that have sex change regret, and I speak to those individuals because the community needs to hear those stories before they make those same decisions and can't turn around. Plain and simple.
She speaks with so much conviction, it almost makes the students fumble before they even get to ask her their little rhetorical questions. Now, what's about to come next might be the funniest part of all of this Q&A. Watch this.
What do you have to say to the trans students on this campus who actively feel victimized by your presence here today? Additionally, you just pointed out that this man detransitioned, but earlier in your speech...
Guys, I want to hear her. Go ahead. What do I have to say? Just the question, please. No speech. What is the question?
What do you have to say to the trans students on this campus who feel actively victimized by your presence here?
Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this. Next question. My goodness. Seriously, somebody just give out free hugs or something in the somebody give out free hugs. I can't be your mommy, okay? I'm too pregnant. I can't be your mommy.
It's so funny the way she leans with the microphone on the side, as if she's trying to intimidate the students before they even speak up. It reminds me of that video of Kevin Hart doing the same thing. Look, she does it in the next clip too.
Next up.
As a non-binary person, what do you have to tell me about my identity? Because I know for a fact I'm not confused.
Okay, next question. Great statement. That's a statement. That's a statement. Okay, you know your identity. You're not confused. Congratulations, sweetheart. Thank you very much for your statement.
That woman was expecting a whole rant about how non-binary people don't exist, so she can have what to get angry at. But now she's going to have to get angry at the fact that Candace was not having any of it. That was brutal.
Tells you that they're transgender, believe them. A lot of people will say that it's impossible for a 4-year-old.
Why is it always people that don't have kids that are speaking for children? I'm trans and I've been a stepmother for the last 2 years. He's 5 now and has no idea that I'm transgender. He's not ready for that conversation and we don't plan to tell him for a very long time until he's old enough to understand. 5-year-olds believe Santa Claus exists. And the fact you can sit there and tell me a 3, 4, 5-year-old is mentally competent enough to transition is fucking insane and borderline predatory. I'm thankful I waited until I was an adult because as a child, I would not have been mentally ready for how serious a transition is. What baffles me is that these radicals think that transitions are so normal and not a big deal. My stepson, for example, loves pink and loves Barbies. And trust me, I'm all for breaking gender norms, but none of that means that he's trans. These people think children must medically transition to be validated, but they want grown men to be validated even without a transition whatsoever. Wild. It's not safe or morally ethical to allow children to transition. Let kids be kids.
Truer words have never been spoken. Leftists seriously be trying to convince people that kids can be born trans. Absolutely insanity. Okay, now watch this woman trying to call Candace out on her supposed hypocrisy.
Hey.
Hi. So you mentioned earlier about the importance of reading and how that helps people be more enlightened and speak and think more freely. What do you think about that when we're thinking about book bans happening in states like Florida?
So I want to be careful because now we're getting a lot of books, and I'm not sure that they are the books that should be in classrooms, like White Fragility, which they're passing around, which is just really state topics that are being implanted into people's head. I'm talking about true education, like people actually learning hard academics and not fluffy ideologies. But what book ban are you talking about when they're banning like CRT?
I believe there's been a variety of books related to...
But they're not banning you from buying them. They're saying we're not going to have them in the school system.
Yes, at school,
Yeah, totally
libraries,
fine.
and it's also with LGBTQ plus books and related topics.
Candace's answer to this question needs to be printed on the school hallways.
For kindergartners, yeah. I think sexuality and little 5-year-olds don't mix. I think mommy and daddy... Yeah, I think it's... My personal and honest opinion is that what is going to follow very closely behind transgenderism is pedophilia. There is absolutely no reason that there are teachers fighting to talk to 5-year-olds about their genitalia. It's sick, it's weird, teaching their colors and their numbers and to go home and love their parents. And if you show me a person that believes that they have a right to talk to my child about pedophilia, you're going to have a very upset Candace Owens, let me tell you, because that person is a pervert and they should not become within 10 feet of a child.
In America, over 28 states that are full in the head have taken measures against this nonsense of letting the left run wild. They want to teach kids about critical race theory because they think that this is what's going to solve racism, while completely ignoring and downplaying the reverse racism they are enacting on by labeling white kids as oppressors. Now, here's to a feminist that has a confusing question to Candace.
I've raised my hand before, so I just want to preface that I am, have opposite views, but I do want to have a genuine conversation without feeling belittled, so I do just want to preface that.
Yeah.
I am a feminist. I do study specifically academia and the structure of academia and what that looks like for people of color. So in relation to free speech, do you feel that free speech is free for everybody in terms of Western society and the America that we live in today, and at what point does free speech no longer become free?
What do you mean, at what point does it become no longer become free?
Some rhetoric can be harmful to other communities, especially in the way that it's spread in the media, and I think that goes for both sides. But
can you give me an example? It's always easier to answer a question.
So what I know we all are aware of what happened on campus last year.
I'm not.
Okay. Great. Look it up. So it was just involving the feeling of LGBTQ members of the community feeling unsafe with rhetoric that's being shared in terms of transphobia.
That was so rude. The tone she had when she said, look it up.
If you're a man, I need an example, and someone, if you're a biological man and someone says, hey, what's up, dude?
More of there's students on campus that are living in communities where they don't feel safe because of rhetoric of explaining that transphobia isn't accepted. So my question is just how do you think free speech impacts everybody in communities?
Yeah, the idea that if somebody looks at a man and calls them a man, that they're suddenly unsafe because they've created a false reality in their own head. I don't abide by that. I think this is what's really happening is that we are celebrating mental disorders in America right now. I had a stalker, a very serious stalker at FBI, ended up getting involved, who had suffered from schizophrenia. He very much believed, and it was a terrifying thing to go through. He escaped the Psych 5150 hold, and he very much believed that he and I were in a relationship, and he would send me about 100 emails a day, okay?
Time to listen him as one of the acronyms now.
In the world of what you believe in your own head now needs to be accepted as reality, I would have had to marry him and raise my children with him, okay? But what was going on in his head wasn't actually reality. And me saying that this person needs to stay away from me and my family because there's something wrong with him and he was threatening to kill me if I didn't, raise my child with him, that was reality. That was something that had to be dealt with. So what's happened right now is the left is trying to make it seem that people who see reality for what it is are demented and are creating unsafe territory, and that's not the truth. In fact, what I think is unsafe territory is for people to be affirmed in their delusions. So I will never refer to a biological male as a female. And if that makes somebody feel unsafe, I'm not following you around. I don't know what happened on your campus. I wouldn't follow you around and say, hey, you're a male. Totally fine. Go live your life as you want to live your life. But when you say that the way that you live your life now has to impact me and I have to pretend that I see a woman when clearly you are a man, I shouldn't have to play that game. That's all.
You can't really expect anything other than absolute schoolings from someone like Candace that does speaking for a living. But honestly, she didn't even use anything other than pure common sense, sprinkled with some heavy charisma. Now here's to the last Wokey that asks Candace a question about gay families.
Hi.
According to Britannica, the definition of the nuclear family has expanded with the advent of same-sex marriage. Children in nuclear families may be couples' biological or adopted offspring. Does this mean that the merch you sell supporting, nuclear families means that you support trans couples adopting, gay couples adopting, and spreading this rhetoric that you talk about?
So you're talking about the expansion of definition. So right now they've expanded the definition of woman to include biological males. This gets back into what I was saying earlier about the left's controlling linguistics and just pretending that, okay, a nuclear family can now be two trans parents that are adopting a child. That is not the nuclear family unit that I am talking about. I believe that I am talking about marriage between a male and a female, which naturally and biologically produces children. So no, I do not take that new updated definition of what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a nuclear family.
No BSing allowed. That's all for now, but wait, the fun isn't over yet. If you like Candace, you're sure to enjoy Douglas, who boldly stated, "Woke people are stupid." And that's your spoiler alert. Be sure to watch the video that just popped up on the screen. It's going to be even more savage and brutal. We're looking forward to this one, and I'm sure we'll see you there.